I'm delighted to welcome a panel from Europe and Asia's top business schools from Malaysia and Kuala Lumpur. It's lovely to see you again, Sean Ferguson. Sean is the Associate Dean at the Asia School of Business, this fascinating tie-up between MIT Sloan and one of Southeast Asia's biggest banks. It's great to have you with us. I'm also joined by Agnès Cosnier-Loigerot. Agnès is the Global Director of the Career Development Center at INSEAD. So I guess, Agnès, you have, with a school that has expanded its footprint to Singapore, Abu Dhabi, and now there's that San Francisco center that's waiting to fill up. Also from London, Lisa Umenyiora, who is the Executive Director of Careers at Imperial College Business School. And Lisa, look forward to hearing your perspectives, the business school that ties in to everything that the school is doing around science and technology and innovation. And also Vasilis Zaravellas, who is the Assistant Director of MBA Admissions at the Rotterdam School of Management, a school that describes itself as being a force for positive change. And Vasilis, we need positive change right now, don't we? I think we wanted really to start the panel and just go around to each of you, perhaps just to look a little bit at the current job market. These are exceptional circumstances that we're all seeing, and what you're seeing, the sort of discussions you have with recruiters, and where you think that might take us. So, Sean, if we can get a perspective from Southeast Asia and what you're seeing at ASB.
So thanks, Matt. I really appreciate the opportunity to share some insights. I think Asia is a bit different than the rest of the world because it's almost been going on here for the whole year. And so the governments in this part of the world have been proactive and very strategic as far as managing the situation. And so while things have slowed down in this part of the world, they were still moving along at maybe at a more deliberate pace than they had been in the prior year, but still, hiring was still moving along. And things slowed down significantly when the corporate headquarters in the United States and Europe, really started to, the impact started to hit them. And so we've seen more global hiring freezes. And what that's done is slow down hiring here for us. So, in the course of a week, we would be talking to a recruiter who's, a multinational recruiter that's looking to hire. There's tons of growth opportunities in Asia, but they're like, hey, there's a hiring freeze, and we're still trying to interpret what that means for us. And but the industries that have been more resilient in this part of the world have been the tech industry, and not just big tech in terms of like Facebook, Google and those guys, but it's been tech on every dimension. So it could be a consumer products company that's working on an e-commerce strategy to get to different parts of the country, right? Or it could be a digital transformation to help optimize the supply chain. So it's tech on many different dimensions. Consumer goods more recently has been more strong. We've been seeing recruiters amp up their efforts in that dimension, and then things like supply chain and logistics and things that are related more to the cost side of things has been still pretty resilient. Finance, management consulting has been, tapering off. And I think the message that, we're giving students is that for management consulting, when we have these kind of cycles, like if you go back to 2008, 2009, and you go back to the .com 9/11 slowdown, it was more kind of cost oriented, operational efficiency oriented kind of roles that would predominate. And so we've helped students think about, if that's the direction you want to go, you might have to reposition yourself or change some of the articulation of your messaging. But I think that the big thing in Asia that we're seeing is networking is still going to be key. We tell our students there's a one-letter difference between networking and not working. And even though there's a global hiring freeze, I think hiring freezes don't really mean hiring is frozen, at least in our context. It just means there may be another level of approval to move forward in the hiring process. Another set of eyes has to buy into that hire. And so it's always prudent to knock on all the doors and just don't assume that it's not open.
Right. And of course, McKinsey, thanks for getting us started, Sean. McKinsey, 10, 15 years ago already was identifying that the war for talent of internationally minded individuals. That's I mean, this is difficult times, but those are still fundamentals that the market in Southeast Asia and across the Asian market are looking for, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. One of the things that we hear from people are that from our recruiters is they need people who can hit the ground running, comfortable with ambiguity, and have a cross-cultural savvy that they can go into different contexts. So it's not just enough to work in Singapore, but can you do a stint in Jakarta or Thailand or something like that? Do you have the sophistication to code switch and fit in different environments? You don't have to be an expert in every different culture, but you have to have the sensitivity and astuteness to be able to quickly adapt and pick up social cues so that you're able to still move projects forward and such.
So, and yes, INSEAD describes itself as the business school for the world, and typically will welcome over 90 nationalities into those September and January class starts, which must mean that your job is then keeping track of those 90 nationalities and global hiring markets, from your perspective, not just from Fontainebleau or from Singapore, but from a global perspective. What are you seeing at the moment?
Yeah, we're indeed lucky to be able not only to work with current students coming from many different countries, but also to connect and stay engaged with the whole community who's across the globe, of course. And so it really helps us get a good understanding on where the markets are these days, and to get some insights from within as well, thanks to the alumni. So what's interesting indeed, as Sean was sharing, is that of course there are some industries who suffer more from than others, definitely, but there's still in many different areas, even the ones most hit, there's still a good pool of opportunities for MBAs, thanks to this combination of technical skills, hard skills, and soft skills that they can bring in order to help these different businesses to cope with the current crisis, and to be able to then indeed look around and tackle the current difficulties that they are having, the struggles they have in different areas, and look at different areas where indeed MBAs could bring a lot, could contribute a lot, like working on the cash flows, working on the logistical aspects, supply chain aspect, working on the workforce, anticipating the future of work as well, even further, by leveraging the AI and the impact at different levels across all different functional areas, exactly like what Sean said as well. So it means that for our students, we do, of course, currently have them still engaged with a lot of companies across different sectors, and many, I mean, the usual suspects remain very active, because for key positions at the leadership level, in order to be able indeed to manage the crisis, but be able to recover from it and have a strong leadership team being able to recover from it. This is why we still see some interesting positions open to our current students. So key positions remain available to them. It's a different approach that students should have, though. And it's been something we've been sharing and that we do educate a lot on, thanks to this black box of career development a curriculum that I'm happy to share afterwards. But indeed, we see ourselves as with a role of educators as well. So we do not only connect, and we do not only market and try to understand where the opportunities are throughout the different markets. We also try to have them understand their value proposition and find out where they could be great contributors to these different businesses, and help these different businesses from the US to expand in other regions, for instance. So help these businesses grow and expand in other countries, or diversify themselves and focus now on new business areas after this crisis, where they realize that indeed we may have to make sure we have quite a good diversity of talent and a good diversification process as well. So it's fascinating to see these days that the companies across different sectors are quite a lot working with startups, for instance, in order to be able to indeed manage the current difficulties. And then this is where MBAs have a chance to act as a startup, with a startup mindset, I would say, and be very much like force de proposition, as we say. So like, this is what I can offer to you, and work exactly like the startups are doing these days to really bring the solutions, and in a sustainable way as well. So it's going into this kind of business as a force for good that we also have at INSEAD, and trying to understand how these digital transformation, the AI, the sustainability, the private, the public-private partnerships, how to leverage the networks, how to create smart collaborations with many different entities, so that indeed we can answer all these difficulties, tackle them, and then recover from it. And we believe that students doing an MBA, and at INSEAD in particular, are definitely equipped for doing so. So they are definitely, this is what they get from the academic curriculum and from the career curriculum to really become the next business leaders, bringing sustainable solutions and anticipating any of these crises moving forward.
So an underlying confidence that with those sort of the right skill sets, we'll actually need this generation perhaps even more in the current volatility that we'd face. A little bit later in the panel, we're going to discuss actually how as teams you work in career services, and recognizing on this panel that they're all intensive one-year programs, and therefore how you hit the ground running and are able to hold up that sort of mirror to individuals, their strengths, weaknesses, and how that might impact. Now, of course, that Imperial has, whether it's around issues of sustainability, healthcare, there's so much that goes on within Imperial College, and that relationship with the business school. Your Dean Francisco talks a lot about reinventing business, sustainability. So Lisa, what are you seeing, and how are some of those themes beyond COVID? Seems to be all we've talked about in the media in the last 6 weeks. There are still some fundamental challenges that the world needs to fix. So how are Imperial MBAs going to achieve that in their own careers?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Matt. So, I mean, I would certainly echo what Sean and Agnès have said so far in terms of the current situation. I think the one thing I would emphasize is, I think that the situation as it currently stands for the students now, and the students who are graduating this year, is going to be very different from the situation that incoming students are going to be facing when they graduate this time next year. And I think it's important just to kind of clarify that. I mean, we don't quite know how this situation, this global current situation, is going to play out. And certainly, there have been a number of reports upon it. So I know there was a recent McKinsey report talking about how the impact on jobs and the economy will depend really on the length of disruption, how deep the disruption is, but also what the shape of the recovery looks like as we come out of it. And we're still too early in that game almost to know how that's going to play out. We've certainly been seeing, obviously, an impact, as you would expect, on recruitment. There are certainly students who are still going through recruitment opportunities, and there are still positions out there, but we have to be realistic. Of course, there's currently, as Sean said, there is an impact, and there are companies, whether they're multinationals or whether they are small startups, who are pausing, who are just reviewing, and who really are focusing on business critical activity at the moment as they reflect and rethink about, what is the most important for them and how can they see their company through the crisis in the best possible way. So I think, different industries and different sectors will bounce back differently, depending on which they are. But as I said, there certainly are still opportunities in finance, for example. In the UK, we're still seeing banks recruiting for tech and quant roles, data scientist roles. They're still implementing Brexit plans, something that everyone's sort of forgotten to talk about recently, thank goodness, but it's still happening behind the scenes. And so there's a lot of opportunities, as those are being put into place. And then, that to a certain extent, we're seeing, as Sean mentioned, there are some growth areas. So there's a lot of opportunity in e-commerce, whether that be around distribution or logistics or e-payments, those sorts of areas. online platforms and tech-focused roles, supporting remote working, home fitness, streaming, social media, and then of course healthcare, which at Imperial is central to some of what we do and what we teach and what we research. And I think that the current situation is certainly going to have a big impact on the way that business is carried out, and that tech-focused element is certainly going to continue as we see ourselves coming forward and out of the current situation. And so having an MBA that particularly provides you with, the latest technical skills and the knowledge needed is really important. So, one of the strengths, for example, at Imperial College Business School is really teaching our students how to lead in the technology-driven world. And that's something that really is relevant, so relevant today as we're moving forward through these interesting times. So I agree with what Agnès and Sean have both been talking about in terms of those hard and soft skills that are so important for the students to be going forward, developing resilience and demonstrating leadership in times of change. And these are certainly things that can be learned through their MBA program. And seeing companies not wanting to totally stop that interaction with MBA candidates. It's really important, as Agnès was saying, that they're pipelining new recruits for as they're coming out of this phase and as we're going into recovery. So that ongoing interaction and that ongoing networking is so important. And these are some of the things that we've been supporting our current MBA students with, delivering a series of webinars related to the current situation to help our students to think about what can they currently be working on, how can they change and maybe adapt their situation or their approach to change to virtual networking. What does that look like? How does that differ from face-to-face networking? How are they rethinking their online brand? Because that's very different to your elevator pitch when you're networking face-to-face, for example, and talking through what some of those opportunities look like and how to help them to put in place their plan B.
I'd like to come back to that idea of pipelining and companies that, that don't want to leave the campus. They're thinking about recruitment needs for the next 5, 10, even 15 years. But turning to Vasilis, of course, from the perspective of the Rotterdam School of Management, and of course, with an MBA program, when as many as 65% of the graduating class might start their careers in the Netherlands or within Schengen. So what are you seeing from the perspective of Rotterdam?
Sure. Thank you. Thanks, man. So from Rotterdam, what we've been seeing from the graduating class that actually graduated a couple of months ago, indeed the job offers has gone down within the Netherlands. However, this hasn't impacted the exiting class. We're pretty much on the same numbers that we were for the past few years. But as Lisa, Agnès, and Sean mentioned, we're all going through a phase of change, of uncertainty, not clear waters of what is coming up. So what I can say from our side is that we've seen a smaller impact, let's say, than expected for the time being. We do see companies coming from finance, from consulting, from technology, still hiring and still have openings. Again, as an MBA graduate, you have stronger tools to fight this fight, in the sense of when you go out in the market, you have a higher chance and a higher probability to be hired. And an MBA, indeed, it will equip you with the hard skills, but also the soft skills to be a better leader, and especially in times like this. I've had discussions with alumni who are also looking into the situation, and they were like, yeah, this is right now one of the best cases that an MBA student or graduate can potentially work on to come up with solutions, to come up with plans on how to help a business actually survive, let's start with that, or grow as well. Because again, in times like this, there are also opportunities for businesses to grow. As all the panelists already mentioned, healthcare, technology firms, digital media. So these are important areas that people can still work on and develop. And I think it's quite important for the MBA graduates to also understand that this is a different era they're gonna living in the next year or two. Networking is also going to be very important. This is something different that we're all experiencing, like even in today's meeting, like it's, for some people, it might be a bit different, like being able to connect via video. So try to imagine, like, finding a job via just video interviews or trying to network with people. So from RSM side, we try, from the careers department, we try to reach out to alumni, to reach out to our network. And we do have a really strong network here in the Netherlands to help our students and graduates to be connected with companies, to ask questions, to see how is it going to be to move forward. So I think that's really, really important. Our alumni network has been very helpful the last few weeks because, again, when students are like, okay, what's going to happen to me in a few months' time when I graduate? So we have also used our alumni network a lot, significantly, to have those discussions with the students, to reassure them that there's still going to be jobs out there. There's still going to be opportunities for them to explore. And I think it's very important for people to stay positive. This will help them also to build that resilience that they will need in the next few months or even a couple of years ahead, to be able to go out there and be successful in what they would like to achieve. So I think that these are important things to have in mind.
Right. Well, but between you as panelists, we've made a great start, because whether we're looking at the sort of the agility and entrepreneurial thinking that Agnès was referring to, an understanding of technology, whether it's machine learning and AI that Lisa referred to, and Vasilis, as you also then bring in these influential networks of alumni and the role that they can then play to support. So perhaps to each of you, in a tough market, and Sean, I'll start with you, in a tough market, why are you better off with an MBA from one of your top schools than without?
Yeah, so I think the thing that an MBA from a top school does for you, all of our schools are great. They provide a rigorous curriculum, and they help you think about, how do you solve problems in the gray area and in ambiguity, right? And I think in times of crisis like these, that ability to, to make decisions, problem solve in the gray area, be comfortable with ambiguity is what's going to differentiate you. Also, all of our schools are great at the diversity that they provide, right? And so not only are you getting a rigorous education that's facilitated by a world-class faculty member, but you're also around a group of peers who are seeing things from a different cultural or industry context that is informing how you think about business problems going forward. And so, that's one element of it. Then there's the other piece that, all these great schools, everyone thinks of the alumni network, but it's the broader social capital that you're able to tap into. Great schools have these great ecosystems, and the best schools are usually, the kind of center or the hubs of their environments and their city. And so if you want to be in that particular part of the world, you're able to tap into a pool of social capital, and first level stakeholders like alums, second level stakeholders like companies, like partners, and the entrepreneurial ecosystem. And I think that's, that's some of the value that people miss out. And then the other thing is that, in this time, I think expectations need to be tempered. But if you look at the long-term trajectory, we just did a study on the class of 2020, right before the, .com downturn, and the trajectory, whether you graduate in a crisis or immediately before or immediately after, the trajectory is almost the same for everybody. And so, it's here, but it may not be as apparent in a down cycle. And what happen a lot of times in these down cycles is that there's retrenchments, there's new opportunities that emerge that, and there's opportunities that are kind of under your nose that you didn't appreciate, right? So nobody is, like Lisa she alluded to Brexit, right? So that's not maybe the first thing people are thinking about when there's opportunity for an MBA, but that might draw things, healthcare. Agnès talked about AI and blockchain, and so these things sometimes come into crystallization in these kind of crisis periods. And an MBA is usually the best business schools are at the center of these conversations in their part of the world. And that's a tremendous amount of capital that you have that you can deploy that you just don't get from staying on the sidelines, staying at home in your current situation.
And yes, if we look at a typical post-MBA trajectory of INSEAD students, there's over 1,000 of them every year. So lots of individual stories. But you know, if 45, 46, 47% might start their post-MBA careers at McKinsey, Bain, BCG, one of the big consulting firms, you know, 5 years out, as many as half of them are doing something entrepreneurial, you know, something startup. So as you then sort of guide them for their post-MBA careers, are you always trying to think, well, you know, there's where you might first start as you come out, but you're also trying to think about 5, 10 years from now. What's the time frame that you're working with?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we always try to work with them on their curiosity. So we make sure from the beginning that we help them broaden their scope, explore, be curious. We run a lot of sessions around reciprocity rings so that they can ask any question, get some help, so that they really become into this mode of give and take, so that then they are prepared when they reach out to the community out there. And of course, we work with them on how to connect and how to pitch and how to do all these things like we all do in the different schools. But it's very important indeed for us now more and more from the beginning that we work with them on this community concept. And it's not only a concept, it's really something real, and it's amazing. And I think students in all our different schools, thanks to the diversity and the amazing networks, they do understand from the beginning and even before they join how much the network is pivotal in their future career paths, definitely. So when we refer to the community, it's definitely the community of INSEAD alumni, for instance, but it's also themselves. And when we have 1,000 students a year, they can tap into a lot of networks already just by leveraging the peer network. But we also work with the community that involves all the internal stakeholders. And so thanks to the deans, thanks to faculty, all together with us as well, and the employer engagement team within the Career Development Center, for instance, we do try to connect with all these different hubs out there, and of course the entrepreneurial ones as well, so that students can also learn by doing. And so on top of this curiosity, and then working closely with the coach in order to understand their interest, value proposition, and then who they would like to become and what could be the different stepping stones in order to go there. We try to have them check assumptions as well and do a kind of reality check by doing. And so and even these days through the virtual technology, we can organize a lot of competitions, and students themselves these days have organized like a COVID-19 competition, so that indeed they work with the VC ecosystems, alumni in the different VC and PE firms, for instance, in order to co-develop with other entrepreneurs out there, and then find these sustainable solutions to help the current markets and the different companies. So thanks to this combination of personal career coach and then the employer engagement specialists who cover all the different sectors and regions, the students indeed have this opportunity to better understand what they didn't know when they joined. So to really come across this pool of opportunities out there and try to work on this fit and what it is that would fit with their future needs, where they want to go. And so then how to make it manageable in a 10-month period with a fast MBA program, how to make it manageable, how to break this career development plan into small steps so that indeed they can not only discuss, share, prepare, but they can also learn by doing, as I said, so that's the best way to really validate their plans and be ready. So it's true that we have quite a lot of students going into consulting, and it's usually more like around 30-35% for the ones joining consulting for the first time as new hires. But these days we see also high interest and a kind of even increased interest in this sector, because the consulting sector is also bringing a lot of amazing projects to the students on lots of different areas. So it's another way to learn very quickly, of course, on how to go with the digital transformation, for instance, that then they would adapt and bring into any companies they would join later on, or as a way to learn more for their own business that they want to create some years down the road. So we do, yeah, we.
INSEAD has joined Imperial and Rotterdam as two of the top schools with these Masters in Management programs, typically at pre-experience level, whereas the MBA, average age in your programs is 29, 30 years old. And perhaps we expect a greater sense of self-awareness and maturity. Certainly applications ask, well, where do you see yourself 2-3 years after the Imperial, INSEAD, Rotterdam, or Asian School of Business MBA program? Lisa, do you work with Joel and the rest of the admissions team for the Imperial MBA to discuss applicant profiles and their career goals? Just that sense of they have that self-awareness, clearly what you can then bring to them to help them in their reflections?
Yes, absolutely. So it's an interesting question, Matt. So yeah, at Imperial College Business School, we, like I'm sure many schools, have an admissions committee, and careers and the marketing, recruitment, admissions teams very much work very closely together, very closely joined up in terms of, the types of students that we're looking for, what a good fit is for our program. And really that is about the fit within a STEM business institution. We're obviously a business school, but firmly sitting within a wider STEM university, which has fantastic collaboration opportunities there. And at the same time, we're obviously looking for people who are really got a good sense of what they're wanting to get out of the MBA. So they don't necessarily need to have a very exact, some people are coming to explore their options and to think through where they'd like to take them. And certainly the careers team helps students to do that, particularly very quickly on a one-year program. We get straight into that. And actually we support our students even from before they've started. So about 4 months from before students enroll with us, we start to offer support and careers onboarding through the careers service online. So from about May, actually that's coming up very soon, we'll be working with offer holders to give them access to career support to help them think through some of those different options, because by the time they come to September, they need to really be formalizing much more clearly what they're wanting to do and where they're wanting to drive that forward. So we really like to work early with our students to support them in ensuring they've got a great CV, that they're really thinking through what their different options are. And once they've gone through that careers onboarding process, they'll gain access to a wealth of resources, whether that's some of our online e-resources from MBA Exchange and VMark, for example, that helps students to improve their CV based on fantastic AI technology, and then align their CV with their LinkedIn profile, for example, or whether we're talking about maybe students who are wanting to go into finance, getting support through Wall Street Prep and so forth. So a range of e-resources and also online modules that we've created to help students really understand different industry sectors. So maybe that's around the consulting sector, or maybe they're wanting to go into the finance industry, but they don't really understand the difference and the nuances between the different elements and the different opportunities and roles within the sector. So really helping the students to think that through and gaining the opportunity to have one-to-one support, even over the summer, to help them to start thinking about their careers plan and how they might take that forward once they join us on campus. And once they do join us on campus, our students get allocated a dedicated careers consultant who will be working with them throughout the academic year, so that they're really kind of looking at how we can build up, focusing on those leadership skills, focusing on self-development, and particularly the self-awareness piece that's so important to help students to develop themselves as they go through their MBA program.
Right, and I'd love to talk about those coaches and the sort of soft skills that you're also then developing. Vasilis, we often look at, particularly for the full-time MBA program, the triple jumper, the individual that sees the opportunity through your MBA program to change geography, to change sector, and to change function. Is that something that you're wary of as you look at their post-MBA plans? Is it something that you embrace? And perhaps also you could answer, from the perspective of the Rotterdam School of Management, if they're then looking to relocate and build a career in the Netherlands or Northern Europe, the importance of language skills. The Dutch speak wonderful English, but if they really want to open all of the career opportunities, do they also need to have a good base in Dutch or other languages?
Thanks for the question. Let me start off with the language first. So in my case, I've been living here for the past 13 years. I still don't really speak Dutch, so this has never been an obstacle for me. And we actually see that with our incoming students and the graduates. The Netherlands, here in the Netherlands, we really have like the English language the Dutch are the highest in the world right now in English fluency. So from our incoming international students, this has never been an issue. So people are able to live here throughout their MBA without any issues for their personal life, but also after graduation, they're not experiencing any issues with the language being a barrier for them to enter the market. A lot of multinationals, they actually operate out here in the Netherlands, so they do look to hire international talent. So from that perspective, the language has never been a barrier for them. Of course, we always advise candidates, we always advise students that if you're looking for a further career progression within the country in some specific functions or areas, you might consider to learn the language, because this will help you to really climb up the ladder, but definitely not for the first years of their professional experience. Now, going back to the question about the triple jumper, of course, this is a difficult change for a lot of people. I mean, the first is changing the location, and that's why people are looking to do an international MBA, because that's the first change that they're looking to achieve. With a change of industry or a function, then it becomes even tougher. So from our side, and going back to Lisa's point, from the admission side, we try through the interview to understand better what the candidate is looking for. And sometimes if there are question marks, whether this is going to be something feasible for them, we always try to connect them with the career department as well, in order for them to have like a more informal chat with a career coach, just to go through that, because a lot of times through an admissions interview, they might be stressed. Okay, what if I say I want to do this? What would they think about my motivation to do an MBA? So we're like, okay, it's not a problem. We'll put you in contact with our careers colleagues. You can have an informal chat just for you also to understand a little bit better what you would like to do. So the careers is also involved before the program starts. They have sessions with the incoming students, trying to understand better what they would like to work on, because they are working on a plan for the entire year. Because before you enter the MBA, you're like, okay, I want to go from point A to point B, and that can be indeed a triple jump. Great. How are we going to achieve that? What sort of tools are we going to use, and what sort of tools you will need through your MBA, but also afterwards? And that's also an important point here at RSM, that the careers department will continue working with the graduates with a plan up to 3 years if needed. So as an MBA graduate, sure, you graduated, you went off, you changed your industry, you changed your function, fantastic. But maybe a year down the road, maybe that's not what you were looking for. So you can always come back to acquire the services from our careers to help you more on that. We also have the mentorship program implemented in our school. So one of our graduates can become your mentor. So especially for people who are looking for those radical changes, somebody who has been in their shoes before, he or she can become a mentor for that student. And that's important because especially nowadays, people might be looking to do completely different things than what they used to do like 15 or 20 years ago with an MBA degree.
Yeah, Yeah. Now, and yes, having spoken to thousands, possibly tens of thousands of MBA graduates from the top business schools in the last 20, 25 years, they never talk to me about their mastery of discounted cash flow or a particular accounting course that they've taken. They always talk to me about the soft skills, the idea of the self-confidence that they've built. You talked about networking skills. So marketing, strategy, accounting, all of those core curriculum courses, but it's you guys, isn't it? It's the coaches, the experts that are helping people find their voices, their confidence. Can you just explain a little bit of that black box of careers, who the team's made up of, and how you work to go beyond discounted cash flow and share all of those wonderful soft skills and leadership skills?
Yeah, indeed, we have developed the career curriculum along these lines to make sure that indeed they have a good professional brand and that they know how to interact and how to build their social capital and work on this social intelligence concept these days, which is very important in any company. So the ability to work well with anyone and to bring people towards the same objectives. So we do work a lot on this, and we do have throughout the curriculum and even before they join, of course, through the career coaching sessions, we do also try more and more to collaborate with faculty, which is not always so easy because, of course, we have different time frames. But in order to understand what they teach as well, especially within the organizational behavior discipline, because they do also work a lot on these kind of self-assessment tools. They do, of course, work a lot on power and politics, on social capital as well, on the importance and influence of networks, and how to develop your internal network as well. And of course, a lot about future of work. And so working on discussing compliance, ethics, and all these new jobs that will get created as well, and different to what even we thought it would be before the crisis. So by working in a complementary way, it means that we can leverage on what they hear in classes and then go more and more with them into a kind of practical mode and have this kind of practice and perfect sessions. So of course, each student can meet with their personal career coach as well on a regular basis. But then we try on top of this to do like some group sessions, peer power groups, for instance, leveraging their own knowledge and understanding, of course, of who they should be if they want to go and target this industry, the importance of the relationship building in the PE industry, etc. So leveraging this knowledge that they have and trying to motivate themselves, keeping in touch so that they do not rely only on us and they can keep working together. I mentioned the reciprocity rings that we do at the very beginning, for instance, when they join, which is definitely a way beyond their group study they are in at the beginning for working on all the projects with the professors. It's really making sure that they can also leverage on one another. And so we do try with this practice and perfect, with this kind of pitching competition that we have developed, with the resilience workshops as well. And we do now work and co-develop a series of resilience workshops together with the psychological services as well. So we have that kind of partnership so that indeed all these, either on a one-on-one setting or one-to-many settings, give them this opportunity to have this safe space and to really practice, to be challenged, because we are here these days more than ever. We are here to challenge themselves as well. We want them to understand the leadership capabilities they believe they have and they should be having if they want them to become these leaders who will be able to tackle that kind of crisis moving forward. So the curriculum itself, with all the core courses, career electives that we do, in addition to these individual sessions and group sessions, make this career development like a big box in which they can pick and choose depending on where they are, how much they are advanced in the development of their career plan, because some may be more advanced than others. Some really know what they want, they may not change, and they're already equipped to go there. Others would like to do this kind of radical career change, and then they may change their mind along the way. So we try to have this kind of set of resources, online resources, but also teaching opportunities and one-on-one sessions for reflection. So we try to build this kind of set of resources so that they can pick and choose and make it manageable along the way to pivot at any time and come back to the essentials.
Yes, the MBA is a transformative experience, and so many graduates talk about that. It strikes me it's you. It's your teams, because it's highly personal. It's dedicated to that individual, whether it's issues of resilience or innovative thinking. Sean, for the experience at the Asia School of Business, of course, you bring professors from MIT Sloan over from Cambridge, Massachusetts for an intensive week of finance course or strategy. How do you also then build in what Agnès and Lisa and Vasilis are describing in terms of that self-reflection and exploration of those other skills?
Yeah, so I think for us, our curriculum is a little bit unique. We're we're heavily based on experiential learning. We call it action learning. And every semester, our students spend about 4 weeks on site with one of our corporate partners. And, I think everyone is all bought into applied learning, taking theory and putting it into practice. But the way that we do it kind of fits in well with the whole discovery process. And so, the MIT faculty, they'll come to campus for a week, knock out one of your classes like a finance or an accounting or something like that. Then we'll go on site to the field in Thailand for a week or 2 weeks, come back, take more classes with ASB resident faculty or MIT faculty, then go back out in the field for 2 weeks in say Thailand or Vietnam or wherever. And, you're solving this kind of business problem. And what you're doing is you're building up this kind of cross-cultural skill. I mean, through action learning, you're developing that resilience that the others on the panel were talking about. You're developing this ability to kind of take the technical skills you worked on in class, use them for problem solving, then, leverage a soft skill like, storytelling to engender buy-in from the workers or management or whoever in this different context, while also developing this kind of cross-cultural savvy. And so one of the beauties of our action learning is, because we're a 2-year program, you do this 5 times throughout the course of the program. And so the iterative and immersive nature of our action learning program really has an amplified effect on preparing students for the marketplace in Asia. And we think this is, really, and we incorporate reflection in that, reflection of the self, and then reflection on, hey, what did we learn? How did we impact the project? What are some of the things that we could have done better, take to the next project in the subsequent semester? And so I think, our thought process with this is that in our curriculum, through action learning, we're teaching you how to learn so that you can learn to do and problem solve, right? And so we believe between that, the soft skills, the cross-cultural savvy that you learn, you're kind of future-proofing your career going forward, right? So you get the technical foundation for sure in our curriculum, but if you read all the studies, like the technical by itself is going to be outdated, in a short period of time, right? And it's the kind of soft skills and human skills that you kind of permanently develop that are going to carry you forward. And so we, through the program curriculum, that's how we really get those kind of skills developed. And then we fill in the gaps with our career curriculum, helping, especially, being adaptive to this environment. I think others have mentioned, like, we're teaching them how to network from distance. Like, half our students had to go back home for COVID. And so now they're somewhere in Brazil or somewhere in Africa or wherever. And we're teaching them, like, how do you network from 9,000 miles away? It actually can be done. And, I think with this, because everyone's on virtual meetings and things of that nature, folks now are much more open to a virtual meeting than they were even like 3 or 4 months ago. And so this has kind of created a lot of opportunities for our students and our ability to further leverage our network to kind of help advance their career search process.
Right. Now I'm going to choose, I think, 3 of the questions that have come through for the last 5 minutes of the panel. Some of the questions are more admissions specific, and in 24 hours we will have the admissions directors of INSEAD, RSM, Asia School of Business, and Imperial College Business School that will be tackling all of those admissions specific questions. But I had one final question that I wanted to put to Vasily and to Lisa. This generation, and it speaks to Agnes's point about business as a force for good, which obviously has really been shaping INSEAD's experience too. A sense of purpose. When this millennial generation, they talk about their career aspirations, what is your advice, Lisa, to help them pursue a meaningful career?
Great question. I think a meaningful career to you is very different from what a meaningful career to me might be, which might be very different from a meaningful career for Agnès. So I think I think that's something that's very personal to the individual. And certainly at Imperial College Business School, we're very keen to support students, not necessarily on one particular path or another. We often see students suddenly get really caught up in the concept of applying for consulting positions. And actually, when you stop and say, "But I didn't know you were interested in consulting, tell me about that." They're like, "But everyone's doing it." And you say, "But that's okay, that's their journey. Tell me about what's meaningful and what's important to you." And so really what we have at Imperial is our MBAs work through what's called their personal leadership journey, where their dedicated careers consultant will really help them to think through not only to develop their own personal self-awareness, but also to help students to identify their strengths and their areas of interests and where some of all of those overlap together. And then in that way, we're able to help students to think about what their career path and their career planning and their career goals will look like. So fantastic team of careers consultants who will be delivering that personal leadership journey that's core for all our MBA students. It has some compulsory and some optional elements, from workshops to one-to-ones, some assignments and activities and so forth. And then that's supplemented by a range of external experts who come in, I don't know, whether it's Joseph Liu maybe coming and talking to students about their personal branding and what that is and how they can change that and to think about it in a way that maybe they haven't done before they've come on their MBA and started thinking about where their strengths lie and how you can build that into your personal brand. Or, I don't know, Giuseppe Conti, who comes to talk about salary and careers negotiation. Or Simon Bucknell, who does fantastic interactive session all about how you can have an impact through your communications and storytelling. So really helping the students to think about where they're wanting to go and how we can support them on that journey. And I think the soft skills, while of course in careers we like to think, we do it all and we're the best team. To be fair, actually students gain those skills and have an opportunity to develop those in a range of different activities outside of what we do in careers and outside of their personal leadership journey. So for example, the diversity of the cohort that they're in. At Imperial, our full-time MBA, 9 out of 10 students are from outside of the UK, a fantastically international cohort. And the students' experience of working in syndicate teams, working on assignments for a variety of different modules in those teams will help them to understand, but then also to make the most of the strengths and experience of each of the different team members, for example, and to get the experience of working with students from a range of backgrounds, giving and receiving feedback, and really learning about how to be more aware about diversity, unconscious bias that might play into working with team members from diverse areas. And those are some really important team working skills that are really sought after by employers as they're looking to recruit. And then maybe some other opportunities for students to work collaboratively in a different way to gain some leadership experience or get some different experience outside of the classroom if you want. Things like our Data Sparks project and opportunities, which are opportunities to work on data insights projects with business, or the entrepreneurial journey that students have the opportunity to choose, where they can work with either on developing their own ideas for business or working often with ideas for a piece of engineering or software that's been developed elsewhere in Imperial, that students can then get involved in looking at how they can commercialize that piece of software or that new piece of technology. And a wide variety of opportunities from our enterprise lab to our careers clubs and so forth. So the students do have a range of ways that they can develop those soft skills and really better understand themselves and their strengths and the areas that they want to move forward in.
Well, just a final question for Vasilis. At Rotterdam for the last 11 or 12 years, the theme of goal setting. You've had this project where you've asked over 10,000 students, staff, guests to the school to come up with their I will statement, right? That talks about an intention or a goal setting. In fact, we have John Byrne from Poets is interviewing the Dean at Rotterdam later on today, and I think the Dean has asked him what his I will statement will be. Goal setting and I will, Vasilis, just very briefly, how important is that in terms of the mindset and, you know, really focusing on what's most important to you as an individual?
Sure. I think, Matt, the I will statement also goes back to your previous question about the purpose that every individual has. And again, to Lisa's point, I would strongly agree with that. A lot of times we get a question, do you have any successful alumni? And I always ask the question back, please define what is success for you. So again, it goes back to the whole purpose. So the I will statement, it's something that asks students, alumni, faculty to really come up with a statement that really resonates with them about what is their purpose, what is the driving force behind them doing something. And one of those things can be doing an MBA. Matt, as you mentioned before, an MBA, it is a transformational journey. And this journey doesn't end at graduation. It continues for life. So there are people who will find their purpose potentially within the year, but there might be people who will find their purpose maybe 10 years down the road. That's still fine. The I will statement, it's something that you can sort of hold yourself accountable to it and be like, okay, this is what I was thinking like a year ago or 2 years ago or 5 years ago. Sometimes I still look into my I will statement. I'm like, okay, I'm getting there. So it's sort of like a point for you to reflect on and a guide for you to think about things. And I think what is really, really important as well in general about, because we're talking about all sorts of developments of soft skills, of leadership skills. I think what is important for us to keep in mind as well, and this is something that as an MBA student, as an MBA graduate, it's not only about how strong you are as a person, it has to do also with your emotional intelligence. And this is also where the purpose can come into it. Yes, if you want to become a consultant or a finance person, or sure, great, but it's also about how you interact with people. And this statement puts things into more like a more personal perspective. So I don't want to take any more of your time. So thank you.
You know, I'm going to come back to you and ask you, Vasily, what your I will statement is and how it's changed. Now, a couple of questions from the audience have been great to write in. And again, we'll answer all of those admissions questions in tomorrow's panel. Those employment reports that, of course, you're all involved in producing every year, the FT and others then report in 92% of the class had a job offer 3 months after graduation. So Ronak's question is, what accounts for the 5, 8, 10% that maybe hadn't found a position at that point? I know that this year might be an unusual year, but have they gone into startups, entrepreneurs, have been unable to find employment? And any quick answers to the sort of things that mean that someone hasn't found a job after 3 months?
So it's not because they went into startups. You pull that data out of there. So these are really people who haven't had the opportunity. They didn't find the right job. And so a lot of times I don't think it's the school or the student, right? Sometimes it's just a matter of not finding the right fit, or an individual has very specific expectations that they're looking for to get, and they might just need a longer runway. And so my experience, like there have been years where, you know, we've had like 85%, and it's felt better than years where we've had 92%, right? Because sometimes, yeah, you got everyone into a job, but was everyone happy in the job, or did everyone get the job that best fit for them? You know, so it's you know, I think that 10 to 12%, I'm not sure it's that, you know, there's not that much going on here. It could be 2 or 3 people, depending on the size of your program or that kind of thing. I think for an individual, and you know, and this is just a broader thing, when people are evaluating how they're going to decide on the school, whether someone's at 85 or 91%, you know, it doesn't really matter. If you do what any of us tell you to do from a career perspective, you'll get a job, right? A lot of times it's just, you know, some people have deeper pockets, so getting a job doesn't, you know, mean as much at 3 months for them until they get the right job. So it's a, you know, I think it's just a myriad of factors, and it's not a lot of times like something so systemic that one school is doing over the other, right?
Well, tomorrow I mentioned that we'll be hearing from Virginie from INSEAD, Brandon from RSM, Joel will be joining us from the admissions team at Imperial. But we don't hear your voices enough, because the last 60 minutes was a wonderful reminder to me. And of course, as Sean said, if you listen to us, you know, we'll help you with those next steps of your career. Clearly you do. I think it's a fascinating aspect of the MBA experience that really doesn't get enough exposure, and really appreciate the time that you've taken to share, you know, the sort of mirror that you hold up, the journey that you're helping, this transformational journey that your MBA students go through with your help. So thank you, all 4 of you, for such an insightful and engaging panel. I've learned a lot. We now have on Hoover the opportunity to ask a couple of questions. Someone wanted to ask you, Agnès, about full-time MBA versus the exec MBA and different career services available there. Perhaps, Lisa, there's a question that you'd be able to answer in terms of if someone has already done a master's in management, you know, the idea of coming back 5, 6, 7 years later to do the full-time MBA. So we'd love if you could just take the time for those questions. But all 4 of you, thank you very much. This panel, if you missed the beginning of it, you'll be able to catch up with it on the Poets and Quants website, whether on Facebook or on YouTube. But to all 4 of you from Fontainebleau, from Kuala Lumpur, from Rotterdam, and from South Kensington, thank you very much for the last hour.
Thank you, Matt.
Fantastic. Thanks for having us.